David Duguid.
It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. I'd also like to congratulate my honourable friend, the member for Berwickshire, Roxburgh and Selkirk, on securing this very important debate. He and I share a passion for ensuring the rural communities, such as his, as well as mine in Banffin and those around the room today, are not left behind in the rollout of superfast broadband. I'd also like to welcome the comments from the member for East Lothian on the increasing essential nature of broadband access. It's no longer a nice to have, it's becoming more and more an essential part of everyday life. Rural broadband is a major priority for the Scottish Conservatives, as it should be. As of 2016, only 83%, admittedly an increase from 73% the previous year, 83% of Scottish premises had access to superfast broadband. That's still compared to a UK average of 89%. Only one Scottish constituency is in the top 100 for access to superfast broadband speeds, while 23, including my own constituency of Banffin, are in the bottom 100. What makes this particularly frustrating for Scottish Conservative members of Parliament is that despite the SNP's claims to the contrary, improving this situation is the responsibility of the Scottish Government in Holyrood. While broadband is a reserved matter and the broadband rollout a UK-wide policy funded by the UK Government, in Scotland the Scottish Government is responsible for leading the delivery of the rollout. The House of Commons briefing paper, CBP 06643, if anybody is interested, of 9th March 2017 makes this very clear, and it states unambiguously that Broadband Delivery UK, BDUK, is responsible for managing the Government's broadband funding. Individual projects are the responsibility of local authorities in England and the devolved administrations in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, as set out in the BDUK's delivery model. Incidentally, I found it interesting that nobody from the SNP, as far as I could tell, and apologies if anybody was there, I didn't notice, but nobody from the SNP, as far as I could tell, appeared to be present at yesterday's Parliament and Internet conference, which in part was hosted by the Minister, and which had a significant session in the afternoon specifically on connectivity. And I would have thought that with their constant grievance that Internet is reserved, they would have been all over it, putting pressure on the Minister. The First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, certainly didn't seem to think that it was reserved last year when she pledged that the Scottish Government will, and I quote, ensure that 100% of homes and businesses across Scotland will have access to superfast broadband by the end of 2021. An interesting promise to make if the matter is indeed reserved and thus out of her hands. Banffin, I'm told, has an average download speed of about 6 megabits per second. However, having conducted similar surveys to some of my colleagues, I've never heard anyone that actually has anything like 6 megabits per second. They either have reasonably good coverage if they're reasonably close to a cabinet, of maybe somewhere between 10 and 24, or they have next to nothing, but nothing close to 6. And this, just by understanding the arithmetic, suggests that there's far more people have less than 2 megabits per second than have more than 10. Many of my constituents would only dream of speeds as high as 6, never mind the USO of 10. My own hometown of Turriff, which is the third largest town in the constituency, only recently got fibre to cabinet, which in my particular case, being less than a kilometre away from the cabinet, brings me up to about 10 megabits per second on average. However, most of my constituents in the rural areas struggle to get speeds of, like I said, even close to 2 megabits per second, assuming they can get online at all. It's also worth noting that while the Scottish Government expects 95% of premises to have access to superfast by the end of 2017, in Aberdeenshire, which takes in my constituency, Gordon, West Aberdeenshire, it is predicted that around 11% will still not have access to superfast by that time. The world is becoming more and more connected. If our communities and premises are not adequately connected, then these communities will fall further and further behind the rest of the country and indeed the world, as has already been mentioned. An increasing number of important services, including government and local government services, are moving online, sometimes exclusively, and with each such service, the situation for my constituents gets worse. Relatively recently, we talked about something called the Internet of Things. And this is rapidly becoming more like the Internet of everyone and everything, but sadly not for everyone, only those with a decent connection.